The next segment we're going into is going to be led quite ably by Roscoe, who is the convener of Gangsterism Must Fall. Roscoe, very good afternoon. What's your question, comment?
Good afternoon, Africa. Firstly, I'd like to start off by saying that it is our understanding as Gangsterism Must Fall that local government has a mandate to address issues relating to local economic development, safety within local communities, and public engagement. And we are of the view that the city of Cape Town is currently failing in all three of those departments under the leadership of Patricia de Loo as our mayor. And part of that actually perpetuates the gang violence that we're experiencing on the Cape Flats and in townships and communities, where one person at least per day gets killed because of gang violence. So we would like to know how parties are actually going to be addressing, local economic development within communities such as Manenberg, Elsies River, Nyanga, where we see gangsterism manifesting because of issues relating to unemployment of young people, youth not having any opportunities or not having anything to do within their communities, where we have community facilities that are white elephants and so forth. So basically, we'd like to know, because the research has also put forth the finding that, economic development or the lack of having access to the economy also perpetuates young people from joining gangs, because they are able to access economic opportunities through that. So what is it that these parties are going to be doing, and what is it that, because we've seen that they have not doing or have not been doing what they should be doing.
Okay.
So how are they going to change things, but also how are the parties such as the ANC and the EFF actually going to address these issues moving forward?
Thank you very much for your call. We'll start with the DA.
Well, certainly I agree with that analysis that you can't resolve the issues around drugs and gangs with just one particular action. It's got to be a multifaceted action, dealing with all of them. It is both economic development, it's also policing, it's also social interventions. All of these are required to get to a solution. Now, I think let's start with the crime aspect on that. The municipal police are only 3% of the policing force in the city. The other 97% are South African police. We work where we can with the South African police, but we have focused the city police force very significantly in these gang-infested areas to deal with these issues. So we have things such as our gang and drug task team that is driven on intelligence-driven operations, has been very successful, in fact, in dealing with drugs and gang operations. We've brought down the violence in many areas quite substantially. We have the stabilization unit that also moves into these areas to work on these matters. Operation Ceasefire we've been driving has brought down a 31% reduction in murder in Hanover Park, for example, which has been one of the most problematic gang areas in the city. We've rolled that out to 5 more areas like Delft, Ottery and Manenberg. And also we provide school resource officers to try and or to assist the schools to have safety from these gangs. In addition to that, Tony complained earlier about the city's communications budget, but a very strong portion of that communications budget was the mayor's anti-drug campaign, which she ran very significantly over the last couple of years, that was focused on quite a number of different aspects of drugs, targeted at drug users themselves, targeted at the families of drug users, targeted at those who are affected by drug takers, all of which is to drive that social intervention. And let me say that we got a very, very significant response to those. The very successful campaigns had very strong call into our help desks. The phone calls came in very significantly higher than they had been before, and we've been able to intervene and assist families in many of their drug actions. In terms of local economic development, well, again, you have to work on a number of different ways. There are general interventions in terms of assisting informal trading, for example. Informal trade is not just hawking, it is people who are trying to build their businesses. We have to ensure that we improve the way that we provide sites for businesses. And this we're doing on a very programmatic basis across the entire city. We also provide, for example, assistance to small businesses in how to engage the city, how to get business from the city, and so on. And inform them and assist them in approaching our 15 billion rands worth of tenders that we put out.
All right. Tony?
All of the stats that Ian Nielsen has just outlined is belied by the reality of people. Because you can present whatever numbers you want to, and I suppose you must get your money's worth for the 50 million rand you spend on advertising and the spin doctors, so they give you these numbers in the hope that people will think, well, actually there's not bullets flying in the areas. But when we count the bodies, we know that there are more people dying today than ever in the history of the city. And that's people dying under your watch. So it doesn't matter what you say, the reality is that you failed because the safety environment is worse than it was before. And that's really what the discussion must focus on. But let's look at how you respond to that. You talk about the huge amounts of money spent on ceasefire and ShotSpotter and all of these gimmicks that have done nothing to address the fundamental problem of people dying in the streets every day and other people being held hostage in their homes, because that's the net effect of gangsters. The drug things, of course you may be getting more calls because the problem is getting worse, so there's going to be more people calling in for assistance. But the problem's getting worse on your watch, and you're not effectively presenting a program that inspires people with hope that their problems are going to be addressed, and that's the essential problem. Because you're creating little empires in policing, in the Safety and Security Directorate of the City of Cape Town, where the more crime there is, the more employment numbers they put in those positions. And the funny thing is they're reducing the conditions of employment of the school officers and the others, where they're exposed to an unsafe environment, but they're being paid less and they don't have the resources. So what's clear is the City of Cape Town has not been able to deal with the gangster problem, and it's got worse. It's got worse because of the social problems. You're not helping to strengthen families and strengthen communities. And this is the points we made earlier. If you provided water, electricity, and sanitation and gave the backyarders some rights of tenure, because this is council property, so you can give them rights of tenure because that property belongs to the city. Because once the rates that are charged for that could also be determined by the city. But none of those things you do, and those things can make a significant contribution to stability in those homes, the role of the family structure being restored, and children having much clearer guidance. But by virtue of the things that you do or the things that you don't do in respect of backyarders and informal, you tear down that family structure and the instability in our society that drive kids into the arms of gangs. That is perpetuated and, in fact, enhanced in that environment. But you don't even mention that. It's as if you don't understand that that's part of the problem that's got to be responded to. All you want is a few more policemen and a few more people to respond to the challenges. You've got to have a real concern. But I suppose the worst example of the disregard that the DA has for people in respect of this gang and drug problem is that a while back a gangster appeared in court, and a counsellor of the DA, a leader in the DA, wrote a letter to court to say that this gangster who'd been involved in the killing of our people and the selling of drugs mustn't get a harsh sentence because he just made a mistake or something. That, in fact, is condoning that kind of behavior. And you do that as a party, you do that with your leaders. If you wanted to disassociate yourself from him, you would have immediately dismissed that councillor, but that councillor is still operating.
All right, Tony,
but this is the fundamental
quite
problem.
a bit of time criticizing, I suppose, what the DA is doing. What Roscoe's question was, what are you going to be doing? When should you be elected into government in the city of Cape Town to deal with the issue of crime, particularly from fighting it as a crime, but also providing local developmental opportunities for the communities not to have to rely on drugs?
Well, the things to do is self-evident. We've got to change the structural nature of the economy. You can't have black people earning low wages, living on poverty lines, while the wealthy live extravagant lifestyles in the city. So we've got to equalize that in some way. And one of the ways to do is to ensure that workers on the Cape Flats actually earn decent salaries so that they have some money left after paying the bills to be able to drive other areas of demand, and that drives different area of supply, and that's how you create jobs and create opportunities for people. But we're not doing that because we're continuing this low-wage economy that's undermining the rights of workers. You also have to ensure that there's collaboration between the different levels of government and the different agencies that deals with the problems of gangs and drugs. The City of Cape Town doesn't work with SAPS because there's a political agenda. They don't want to be seen to be playing second string to SAPS because they want to make people think that they're addressing the fundamental problems. It's got to be bigger than our egos. Gangsterism and drugs must nearly be a non-partisan issue, a non-party political issue. Let's all work together to address it. But then we've got to call the communities together, something that the DA fails at because it cannot engage with communities to find solutions that includes them as a central driver.
All right, I'll hold it there. Bernard, I'll bring you in now.
The challenge with gangsterism and crime in general in the Western Cape is that the regulations that is in place to ensure that we need to establish community police forums are failing our communities. The one way that they are failing is that the CPFs are supposed to ensure that each policing precinct have a community safety plan. Now, how do you develop a community safety plan? Is to get to the root causes of crime in that particular area, so that you don't just put cash into the pockets of the CPFs without knowing what is the root causes and what you can address pertaining to crime. The projects will then assist to put aside the crime area situation. However, the City of Cape Town constantly say crime is not our issue. Crime is a national issue. We need police, we need that and that. That is one of the challenges. However, the integrated development plan of the City of Cape Town needs to engage communities so that we can ascertain what is the real issues in these areas. We have talked about the integrated plan, and we must engage other sectors of society or the different departments. But the City of Cape Town doesn't do that. As EFF, we would like to ensure that we correct the situation, that we employ community safety workers in the different areas to do patrols in those areas and also then assist to identify what is the actual need. We have learned here in Cape Town that in certain areas, and more specifically the areas close to Blouberg and other white areas, are receiving safety kiosks from the Department of Community Safety of the provincial government. And they are not even being given to areas like Menenberg, areas like Nyanga, areas like Elsies River, and more specifically Nyanga, which is the murder capital of South Africa and the Western Cape. These are the areas where we need to ensure that we address these areas. In terms of the local economic development, it will never happen in these areas because investors won't feel safe to invest their resources in these areas because the city doesn't have a focus on areas like Nyanga, Kailicha,
and is that where your
whatever.
focus is going to be?
And that is the challenge. Look like what they have done in Menenberg. They have closed down the hospital and have wrongly informed people that no, we are going to build it. But the actual reason why they have closed down Menenberg hospital is that they have pulled that resources to Mitchell's Plain Hospital. A clear indication that they are not serious with addressing the challenges of.
You're clearly referring to GF Joester Hospital, which has been closed down, and we'll get Ian a chance to respond to that.
Yes, but let me finalize that input there. They now want to push GF Joester Hospital to the high school across the road. Are they serious to provide education to our people? There's no sincerity in terms of the promises of the DA.
All right, let me remind listeners, the question is, what is going to be done to fight issues of gangsterism in this country, particularly where solutions that can be delivered by local economic development opportunities, I suppose, are concerned? Grant, let me bring you in here.
The ACDP in 2007, 8 and 9 led the city's plan, wrote the city's strategy on alcohol and drugs. The substance abuse plan that is currently being rolled out successfully is an ACDP product, right? When we were in government with the DA in 2006 to 2009, we did so because we acknowledged at that time, and we still acknowledge now, that drugs and alcohol and gangsterism is tearing every single family apart in South Africa, in Cape Town in particular. It's devastating families, it's devastating individuals, it's devastating our economy. So we opened treatment centers, we opened the helpline that the Deputy Mayor was talking about now. There's international recognition for the plan, for the strategy that we started implementing at that time. The difficulty with gangsterism is what the Deputy Mayor said: 97% of the policing responsibility in Cape Town is SAP's. It's not the city of Cape Town. The alcohol and drug strategy that the ACDP wrote acknowledges that. It's SAP's responsibility. It can never be left to Metro Police, 3% of the policing, to deal with it. It can never be. The difficulty, however, is really what I think Mr. Ehrenreich was saying, is that there's an adversarial approach, in my mind, an adversarial approach between the DA government of the city and the Western Cape government and national, so that they don't want to work together. Why would SAPS want to work in an environment where they get blamed for everything and where the DA, city and provincial, takes the credit? So the ACDP will change that adversarial approach to an intergovernmental relations approach, which says that SAPS must take the responsibility, they must take the credit. Even if they have to use the city's resources driven by the ACDP, they must take the credit because it is actually their responsibility, right? That would be the one thing. Informal trading is a way of addressing the National Development Plan, the National Development Plan's vision that small business will create 90% of the 11 million jobs that need to be created by 2030. The NDP says that small business development should create those jobs, right? So the way to do that is you get people out of the informal sector into the formal sector. Informal trading plans are therefore important. There's one informal trading plan existing that I'm aware of in the city, and that's in Tableview. It's a mess. It's poorly conceived. There's no policing. The trading conditions are not being adhered to. There's traders trading in clothes directly outside the shops of clothing retailers in Tableview itself. The sites are poorly chosen. There's no toilet facilities for these informal traders. And if that's the way that informal trading is ever going to graduate to formal trading, that's not the way to go. So the ACDP will reinvigorate that informal trading plan to make sure that it actually works in Tableview and expand it around the rest of the city urgently, because we have to use the small business sector to create the jobs.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of this very invigorating and very insightful debate.